Oh no. We're pausing for a cough break. Nestor's taken up clearly taken up Fidel Castro levels of cigar smoking over the holiday.
It is January 11th, 2026.
What?
We are recording our first episode of the year, our January episode, joined by your host of Over the Loudspeaker, Nestor, and the wonderful Collin from the Hayward Herald. Collin, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay, man. 2026 swung in like a kick in the teeth, didn't it?
It's something. It's something, Collin. It is something. I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit on today's episode, but yeah, it sure is something. That's all I can say about 2026 at this point.
Oh my god. Yeah. Oh my goodness me.
But we have a lot of content for our loyal viewers on YouTube and on the podcast. If you're listening to this in audio format, yes, as we know, we have been trying our best to make this as professional as possible. Isn't that right, Collin? We have better mics, we have better video, we have news to announce. In I'm sure in the headlines. Before we jump into the headlines, I wanted to make sure that we give a little bit of a shout out to the Hayward Voices series, Collin, that you've been the mastermind of. You have you have an event coming up January 17th from 5 to 7 p.m. at Books on B. You will be hosting author, teacher, local rabble rouser Jesse Lee Gunn in his debut, as they say, his debut novel, The Fabric of Oblivion.
That's true. How exciting. I will be there. Yeah, it should be good. We partnered with Jesse. He reached out to me to ask if I would help facilitate his book launch, and I'm more than happy to be there. I'll be emceeing the event. I'll be such as it is. I mean, and then I'll be asking him some questions after he does a short reading. I'll ask him some questions, and then we'll collect some questions from the audience, and then he'll do his book signing, and hopefully people will show up to pick up his book. Again, as Nestor said, it's from 5 to 7 p.m. Next Saturday on the 17th of January at Books on B Street in Hayward, in downtown Hayward. So hopefully we'll see you there. And if not, just make sure you swing on by and pick up his book if that's something that interests you.
Hopefully when this episode launches, we'll be sort of right on time for, as people are watching it, they'll be able to say, oh, the event is happening. Let me head down to Books on B. Keeping my fingers crossed as well that we're able to get this production streamlined so that people are hearing it on time and not after the event has already occurred. But yeah, if you're interested in local authors and especially in books that I actually received an advanced copy and was able to read. I won't say any spoilers, but I think if you're interested in very well-developed characters or protagonists that are very in tune with what's going on inside of them, as many of us, I think, are grappling with the external world and the internal, sort of the emotions that it sort of stirs within us. I think a lot of folks will resonate with some of the emotions that I think Jesse captures in this book. So just a little bit of a sprinkle of a teaser there for folks who are interested and want to hear from Jesse and his book. I'm sure he'll have a lot more to say about that. I hope that I didn't misrepresent anything, Jesse. That was just my take on the book and reading it. So I'm hoping that folks check it out and support their local authors.
Yeah, for sure. And if nothing else, if this does come out too late, we can always just cut this out and edit it in post. It'll be fine.
That's very true. Yeah. So if you're not, you won't even know that this is gone from the episode,
Movie
loyal
magic.
listener. All right. So, Colin, should we jump into the headlines?
Yeah, let's jump to the headlines. It's
right.
January
Let me throw your
2026.
face in the big screen. There it is.
Oh my gosh. Okay, friends, it's January 2026, and let's jump into the headlines for past December. So, we're going to start all the way back. The Community Services Commission pivots to a new fiscal reality. At the November Community Services Commission meeting, city staff delivered harsh budget news for programs slated to receive financial support from the city. Not only were all awards for the coming fiscal year eliminated, but the awards already granted last year were cut in half. The city manager's office canceled all existing contracts as of December 5th, which saved the city approximately $290,000. Quote, pausing the funding cycle for this year is significant, said management analyst Amy Huang. This change has forced the CSC to pivot into working groups to develop strategies to provide non-monetary support to local agencies, including direct volunteering, promotion and awareness, identifying funding sources, and resource development. Also on December 5th, the local Filipino residents raised funds for typhoon victims. Local Filipino advocacy organizations organized an open mic night fundraiser at Impact Academy to raise funds for victims of typhoons Kalamagi and Fangwang. The Filipino government misappropriated over $17.6 billion earmarked for flood relief projects, which likely played a role in the over 500 deaths and almost 2 million displaced people. Quote, no matter how many generations ago my family lived there, I still feel a connection because I am Filipino through and through, end quote, said Brianna E., the owner of Ube Bay, who vended at the event. She continued, I want to do my part from across the oceans to support in any way I can. Unions push back against holiday layoffs. At the December 16th City Council meeting, representatives from SEIU 1021 and IFPTE 21 urged the City Council to reconsider holiday layoffs. Despite concessions from the Firefighters Union, IOFF 1909, $3.6 million still needed to be saved with what City Manager Jennifer Ott referred to as, quote, personnel-related savings. At one point, a member of SEIU stepped forward and placed novelty coal on the dais as a show of disapproval. Many speakers pointed out the unfairness of being laid off so close to the holidays, especially for workers who did not cause the deficit. Quote, for many of us, SEIU Secretary Amber Paris said, quote, this is not about numbers on a page, this is about our lives, end quote. The City Council continued to take ownership of the issue, but did not provide any guarantees. Quote, we are listening to you and we're hearing you, Mayor Mark Salinas said. And cannabis businesses got a big community response. Over 100 people from Hayward, surrounding unincorporated areas, and as far away as Fresno gave public comment on the conditional use permit for the Finos dispensary slated to be located on Groveway and Foothill at the old Walgreens. Since the Planning Commission meeting in September, the company has added a community benefits package worth $1.2 million, $1 million of which is advanced tax revenue to the city and $200,000 to be donated to local nonprofits. Residents from the surrounding area who spoke against it highlighted the potential adverse effects on children and safety, traffic and congestion, and an oversaturation of cannabis businesses in the area. Supporters, many of whom were employees from other businesses owned by the same group around the state, highlighted the economic benefits and enhanced safety that the business could bring. The City Council ultimately voted in favor of it 5-2, though Mayor Mark Salinas spoke passionately and at length against it. If you'd like to learn more about these headlines and support what we do, please subscribe to the Hayward Herald at haywardherald.org. The Hayward Herald is your only source of independent Hayward news delivered to your inbox at least twice a week. Please subscribe and share our stories with your friends, family, and neighbors.
Colin, did I hear haywardherald.org? Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes. So we are officially moving away from Substack. We've been all dark since mid-December, even though there has already been a council meeting, already been a planning commission meeting this year. I haven't been doing that because I've been busy getting this website up and running. We're moving off of Substack because I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but I've noticed in this like feed that they have that I've been getting a lot of white supremacist and fascist stuff being like promoted and pushed up in that feed.
Mm.
And I'm not about to be supporting that monetarily if we can help it. So we went totally independent, got haywardherald.org using a new platform, still doing a little tiny polishing on the website as much as we can. I'm not a web developer or a website person. I'm fumbling through this as best I can, but it looks pretty good. Check us out. You can see, if you were subscribed before, you've already been moved over, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you don't subscribe or you have it bookmarked somewhere, just update your bookmark. There'll be a post about all this coming out very soon. I'm hoping sometime before the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. And welcome to the new phase of the Hayward Herald, going fully on our own website.
If you aren't already subscribed, what are you doing? You're tuning in, you're listening to us, but you're not. Do you have commitment issues? What's the problem here? Subscribe.
And if you are already subscribed, consider checking out our subscription page anyway, because you can donate to us. Actually, help support us, support you with all the knowledge and news that we can provide you. Just a little bit of financial support. Aside from transaction fees, it goes 100% to us. None of it goes to Substack. It just goes straight to our nonprofit newsroom, fully transparently hosted. You can check it out on our About page. You can see all the money that's coming in and what we have. And yeah, check it out. And if you ever have any questions, shoot me an email. I'm more than happy to answer.
I decided I would take a different tactic. Usually I'm like, please subscribe, give us views. We need them so much. And I said, no, I'll go, good cop, bad cop on them and see, different people respond differently to different tactics. So
totally.
Let's get into a little bit of what more can we say, I think, about the layoffs that happened during the holidays. Yeah, obviously a tough blow for working folks in the city. And, I know that the unions talked a little bit about how there was a lack of transparency and that maybe the reduction of employees went beyond what was needed in order to balance the budget. Could you say a little bit more, Collin, of what some of the arguments were there?
Yeah, so there were arguments before that the union made about how we could potentially borrow more from Measure C or borrow money from other pots. And the new city manager, Jennifer Ott, went through those in the meeting step by step and kind of shot them all down. But they apparently, according to the union reps, they did say that they were asked for a 3.5% reduction across the board. That's not particularly fair, considering a lot of the issues have to do with overtime issues, and most employees are not contributing to overtime. They're just two very particular groups that are doing that. The firefighters, I will say, they did step up and they did some big reductions, at least temporarily, which is great. But so far as I know, the police officers union has not made any concessions or come to the table really yet. I know they're working on reorganizing their beat structure, which may result in some changes in their staffing levels. But, I know that I know too that they still have, last I knew, about 25 positions that they've been keeping open, and that equates to, not even counting benefits, at least $2.5 million. Because each officer is at least $100,000 a year. Right. So
when you say keeping open, you mean that those positions can be filled at any point. They just not any point, but they could, in theory, hire and fill those positions over time.
Yeah, I mean they've been keeping according to the chief of police, they've been keeping the staffing level steady, but they are holding those positions open. Those positions are still allocated to them, so they are counting against the general fund. So that money's earmarked for them, even though they at this point basically have no intention of spending it, which makes you wonder why. There have been 20 plus positions open for years, some say over a decade now, in which case why not just close them and save the money?
Right. Has anyone from the city council commented on that?
You'll be shocked to hear that people don't talk very much about the police department in a way like that. There's been one city council member. Councilmember Syrup does occasionally bring up things like that, at least in conversation, but there's not been a lot of public discussion, I will say. So there's been, I think it's something that's obviously still being negotiated. I still see that like negotiations with all bargaining groups are going on constantly. I just heard from the rep at SEIU that like even earlier this week, she was doing big negotiations all day, had just done that in the morning and then chatted with me and then had to go back to work a full work day. So it's still ongoing, but I do know that layoffs did happen. As a lot of people have seen, the library has shortened their hours. A librarian spoke who's with IFPTE. They spoke about how, services are being reduced already, and the library is kind of the easiest place to cut because it's the third largest expenditure to the general fund after police and then fire. The problem is those percentages are really bad. Like it goes from police 50%, fire like 30, and then libraries like 11 or 9. So like it's a really big drop off, but they are like number 3. But it's easier to cut library hours than it is to negotiate cuts to police salaries, I guess.
Yeah, and I saw that in your article. You pointed out also a lab technician from the water facility, and that sort of stood out to me because I think when people think about their city government and all the services that they may offer, someone who is a lab technician at a water facility may not be the kind of first person who comes to mind, but you sort of think about the impacts that these cuts may have, and it impacts those workers who are providing crucial services, one would argue.
Yeah, I mean, making sure that we have safe drinking water would be nice.
Yeah.
Not to mention making sure our waste is processed before it gets shunted into the bay. I don't want my poop choking a fish or something.
If I have the time, I'm gonna make a graphic that shoots onto the screen right now.
Artist rendering.
Yeah, the artist rendering of that wonderful example you just provided for us. No, but yeah, I think, in terms of the reductions, it was a hard time to do this, but was there any way that this could have been held off until after the holidays in a bit to soften the blow? I don't think it would have made a huge difference maybe, but was there a need to send those layoff notices a week before Christmas, basically? Or less than
that's a really good question that I don't have an answer for, because I know they were concerned about cash flow issues, which I know the HUSD has suffered with. The thing is, I know that was part of why they didn't want to draw any more from Measure C, is because they were using Measure C to like even out their cash flow. So they were basically like, the way it works is they don't get all the money like evenly. The city doesn't get like a paycheck of like this X amount of money that comes in every month. They get like a huge lump of it from property taxes twice a year, plus like dribbles in from other funds. So like they use Measure C to like balance it out so that they can actually pay their bills on time instead of like not being able to pay bills for 2 months till the money shows up. But I don't know why they had to do that for like right before Christmas. It's possible there might be like some contractual things where it's like, we've decided on this, we're cutting those month-to-month contracts like as soon as we can to save money as much as we can. But that I will admit that wasn't really explained by city staff, and they didn't see, or the city manager, and she didn't make any comment about it in regards to anything that the union said about it. So.
Well, I know that the city has been discussing, or at least some of the city council members have been discussing solutions to try to, find ways to generate revenue. And I think it was interesting that those at that same meeting, it lined up in that they were discussing this cannabis dispensary that had already gone through the planning commission, if I'm not mistaken, right? And remind me, the recommendation from the planning commission was that it shouldn't go forward.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the planning commission voted against recommending
Voted
it.
against recommending it. Yeah. And mostly it seemed like, and I will say before we jump into this, this was your maybe most, I don't know if it has this been your most controversial article. It
I,
feels like it generated a lot of mostly I would say probably from the unincorporated area, folks that I know that were sort of responding to your article. But would you say that it sort of this article generated a lot of controversy? Or a lot of
I
folks,
mean, it's
or at least riled a lot of people up, let's say.
I mean, I'd say this issue in general probably got a lot of people motivated. I think it's difficult to tell because I haven't because I've been doing like, a holiday and all the website stuff. I haven't been keeping an eye on like view counts,
Yeah.
but I do know that like people got heated over it. Like it's I think it's a complicated issue, and because of its location, it's really difficult because it does impact people who, from an electoral standpoint, have almost no say in whether or not it goes through. Because it's right on that border between, you got, it's like this little sliver of Hayward that juts out, and then you got Cherryland on one side, and you got Castro Valley on the other side, and a little farther down the ways you got San Lorenzo, and it's just, yeah, it's just not a. It's tough for folks who are not able to, who are going to be impacted one way or the other by it, and they're not in the city. So the city council, I mean, I think council members did listen to them, because obviously anyone can call in and speak, but it's they don't have the ability to like necessarily hold those council members accountable for anything that doesn't go the way that they want. And that's tough. I think it's just a reality of the artificiality of borders, unfortunately. Oh no. We're pausing for a cough break. Nestor's taken up, clearly taken up Fidel Castro levels of cigar smoking over the holiday.
Right,
Nestor died for a brief moment. It's okay.
Yeah. It's gonna be like that please stand by, it's like sorry, Colin. I died.
No worries.
I came back to life.
Okay. We can just jump back in wherever. I think
really,
I was just saying how it's hard for people who don't live in Hayward to deal with all that.
Yeah, no, I think it probably will be a little bit exacerbated by the fact that they often feel like the city sort of ignores them.
Mm-hmm.
Especially that community. I think, what is that? The Grove Way, is it where the dispensary is sort of being proposed?
Mm-hmm.
The former Walgreens there.
Yep. But there was, I do think that there was organic community response, but that's not to say there wasn't potentially some foul play or some people trying to put their thumbs on the scale. From what I hear, we have a little speculation station right now of there was a group that spun up called My Foothill Voice, or Our Foothill Voice, I think, actually, which is also interesting because it's very much riffing off of My Eden Voice, a totally legitimate housing advocacy and nonprofit out of the Cherryland area. But the weird thing happened because they have a website, and their email didn't work. And when I had gotten emails from people, it actually didn't go to, it wasn't the email that was listed on the website. Instead of info@ouredenvoice.org, it was info.ouredenvoice.org at like mailserver4.com or something. Plus, like the day after the vote, like all of the documentation listed about like, of how to mail in to the different reps and everything completely disappeared. And there's just rumors that there is someone, a political operative, who is working with the local dispensaries to try and stop competition from coming in, which some people may not have any problems with, but I know that's something at least that Hayward as a city has managed to avoid for some time. I've gotten some some confirmation that this is the case, but I don't have any proof yet, so it's all speculation right now. But I'm keeping an eye on it, working on it. It was tough because it happened right before the holiday, and then City Hall closed for 2 weeks. So we'll see if anything comes of it. At the end of the day, it's not illegal. It just is just feels bad to have like an astroturfing campaign and have legitimate community concerns be taken advantage of by big corporations, you know?
Yeah, I think one of the things that you mentioned from the article was that it was hard to discern who were the actual Hayward residents that were present at that meeting, right? So it's like you had folks from the neighboring unincorporated communities, but you also had folks coming from out of town. You had folks who were potentially, I don't know, being paid to be there. I don't want to say without sort of any evidence to prove that, right? And I think this is where, I think some folks took a little bit of issue with your framing. I thought it was, I read back your article and I thought it was, fair to speculate to say, were there political operatives? I don't, I think there was comments where that you were sort of had a biased approach, but I didn't feel like you were biased one way or the other in terms of, being pro or against the dispensary. The reality is that the dispensary is going to bring in revenue for the city. There's a law that allows dispensaries to operate legally within the city boundaries. So it feels sort of fair game, I think, in terms of, what you were covering and how you were framing it. The website is our foothill
voice.org.
Ourfoothillvoice.org, which apparently popped up over what felt like overnight, right? Like I hadn't heard of this group before. I know there's the neighborhood association that does exist is the Groveway Neighborhood Association, which has been around for a while, and if there was something to come out of there, I don't think there would be any question, right? That's an organic group. They represent folks in that neighborhood, but our Foothill Voice, I don't know, sounds a little bit made up.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely like shady, and I think people were, I mean, understandably, I think the people who were not in favor of the dispensary were I think understandably skeptical that, there were that it was initially brought up by the person applying for the application, like putting in for the application. And they had I've heard rumor that they allegedly have some court records of like, issues with the owner of this like big chain of dispensaries. But regardless, at the end of the day, like, you don't have to like it, and that's totally fine. It's just a matter that like, I think the main issue is that like, I've talked to other people and they do agree that there might be too many dispensaries fairly close together. And that's a legitimate concern. The problem is that that's not that lady's fault. It's the fault of the city council for where they've allowed these dispensaries to be, because they have forbidden them from being anywhere outside of the industrial area and downtown. That's it. Those are the only areas where cannabis businesses are allowed to operate. So it seems disingenuous for like the city council, like Mayor Salinas, to complain about them being so close together when the city's rules are the ones forcing them to be so close together. So like it's just, I feel like it's the whole like cannabis ordinance, I think, was handled by the city so poorly. There were a lot of people who were, I feel like, trying to make it as onerous as humanly possible on purpose to hope that no one ever actually made it through. And because of that, like, people understandably have complaints with these like, large chains coming in, but those are the only people who can navigate all of this stuff. Like if the lady before had tried, and she said she's been trying for 7 years to get this business up and running since she got the permit, and wasn't able to do it until she got someone who had all this money and experience and lawyers and stuff to figure all this crap out for her. And that just sucks. That feels in some ways like endemic to like how things are going with new developments anyway, with like, like if you look at Lincoln Landing and a lot of the new developments on the southern side of town along Mission, like some of these locations are huge, and most of what's coming in are chains. And that's fine, but I personally prefer having like, Hayward based small businesses that are independent versus having franchises come in. But that's just like me. Everyone feels differently about it, but that's what the rules are pushing toward, whether you like it that way or not.
Right. Not every place could be, what is it, St. Helena, I think, or one of those towns up in Napa that only allows, they don't allow chain restaurants, or they don't allow chains at all. So all the businesses
Ooh,
are small businesses, with the exception, I think,
wow.
I think they had a controversy over a Taco Bell that was attempting
Oh,
to open
wow.
up. Yeah. So it gives you a sense, right? But again,
Yeah,
different demographics, different
for
politics.
sure.
Um, yeah, it constrains it to being in that area. You don't have some, it would be, I would be curious to what the response would have been if it would have been, say, on the west side of Hayward, or
Yeah.
on the south side, or, but is there any truth to, I think, some of the, I think, to be fair to the folks in the unincorporated area,
Hmm.
is there anything around crime or safety that we should take note of?
I mean, it's difficult to say, right? Because a lot of what they're dealing with are different rules. So, like, if you're used to Garden of Eden or We Are Hemp, which operate in the unincorporated areas, they're not operating with the same rules. They're not calling the same law enforcement agencies. They're operating under totally different laws than literally 700 feet away in the city of Hayward. So, the one of the two detectives from the vice division in the city of Hayward for HPD were talking about cookies, because that's the only example we have so far, and saying that like it hasn't really caused any problems. There was one issue once where like someone drove a car into cookies, and I know the mayor like complained how long it took to get fixed, even though God knows how long it takes to get anything done around here. um but like they're saying, it's not it's not an issue because they put so many restrictions on them that like you almost can't commit a crime there. And like there's armed guards, they do ID checks at the door. There's like so many safeguards across the board, which is a good thing, but that does draw the crime down. And I think there is um one of the one of the guys working on the project was saying that like, crime in that particular area has gone down since they since they got the lease on that building, because they installed a whole bunch of security cameras and have already had security going around there when it used to be just like a vacant Walgreens. So I think there's hopefully some truth to that, but I also understand that like people don't believe it. Like I get it, especially if you've had experience with places that don't follow those rules, or have been more lax on security, or have had issues and stuff. So I think it's all we can do is work with the knowledge we have and see how it goes, and trust the city council that like they're willing to hold the business accountable, that if they do start causing problems, that they will come down on them. Like multiple council members seem to basically say yes, and if you screw up, we will bring the hammer down, which I think is fair.
Right. And I think, I mean, I was only looking a couple minutes before the show started, to find sort of data, related to crime and cannabis dispensaries. And surprisingly enough, what I did find is that cannabis businesses are often the targets of crime, and
Mm,
um, and so I think it was the top three counties for losses, with the highest number of losses due to robberies, burglaries, and thefts, were LA County, Alameda County, San Francisco County. So,
mm.
it's, but I think people see that and say, see, like crime, but I don't think that means that the crime will then sort of go to it's not the broken windows theory, where it's like, if you don't stop
Yeah.
that crime, it's going to hit, people are going to start burglarizing homes in the area, or but I I do understand why people see that and say like, oh, the crime, right? But it's a cash
Yeah.
business. Cash business is always, and is going to attract folks that are looking for easy and fast ways to come up, right? So I think that's just
Yeah.
the nature of the business, right?
Well, and I think that's part of the issue too, right? Is that because of the rules with the state and the federal level that like they have to operate as cash businesses. My understanding for at least for cookies and probably some of the other big ones, because I think there are more in other unincorporated areas or in especially in like Oakland or in other cities, they might have more independent chains or independent businesses. But I know like for the big ones like cookies, I my understanding is that they have a workaround where you can still pay with like a debit card, and so they don't have as much cash on hand necessarily as you would if you were literally just like if you don't have it's like literally cash only. So which is really dangerous, but they're forced into that position unfortunately because there's no other way to operate. um so yeah, it's really tough, but I think the best I think it's understandable if people are upset about it, and I also think that it's worth taking a wait and see attitude. And I have no doubt those same people who were against it are going to be watching it like a hawk, and like they see one rapper somewhere, they're gonna let everybody know about it. So I think they got their work cut out for them, and I'm willing at this point to see how it goes. But the city does need the money.
Well, that's what I was going to say next. Why, can you explain to me, Colin, or me and the listeners, why the mayor seems to be so against dispensaries? And, it seems like the mayor and Julie Roche, council member Julie Roche, were the only ones that voted against this.
Mhm.
Why take those stance? Is Julie Roche just trying to, I don't know what her base is, but I'm assuming like, is she just trying to appease her more like suburban soccer mom base? And is is Mark so old school, like, Chicano, like drugs are bad? Like, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what Mark Salinas' like stance is around this, why he's so in opposition. I can't really wrap my head around it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna level with you. I don't understand either especially what the mayor's stance in is on it. He literally, without exaggeration, spent 20 minutes talking about it during his comments. And it was still not clear at the end of that why, other than he thought he heard the community was against it and he wanted to go with that. That being said, he's always been against them, and he even said that he will always vote against them, which without explanation, especially because he opened by saying he's fine with people smoking weed, but he's against dispensaries. And I don't understand how you can hold those two things in your head in a logical way. Um, but he, I think, he said he's basically always going to vote against them, and that's just his stance, and that's fine. He can believe whatever he wants. But like Julie Roche surprised me because her all of her comments were leading to a yes vote. She literally opened by saying like I was looking for reasons to say no and I couldn't find any. But then at the last minute, she suddenly voted no.
Yeah.
And so hers was completely surprising. I have no idea what was
I'm
going on
voting
there.
no and I have no good reason why. It's kind of
I mean,
wild.
when she made the comment of like I was so worried about the smell that like I went to the next door of like another dispensary and went to the neighboring building and smelled the walls, that I was like, okay, so you're really looking like you're looking for reasons that it's
Yeah.
bad, and you even say you can't find any. She even commented that, and then voted no anyway. So I don't know.
It's wild to hear how long the meeting was. I think it ran until sometime in the early
It was
morning.
6.5 hours.
It was
It was
the amount of time that I've spent coughing on this podcast. I think, I was just trying to find a way to loop it in there.
it was literally that long. It
Yeah,
was forever.
it's insane. So, I think the last thing we'll say about, I think, cannabis here is that I thought it was maybe another bone to pick for the unincorporated folks is that what they're offering is, in terms of the dispensary, right? It's a very generous community benefits package that they may not ever see they they may not experience those benefits directly,
Yeah.
right? I think it's a package of over $1 million offered to
Mhm.
advance the city $1 million in tax revenue, on top of donating 200,000 to local nonprofits in a show of good faith. Um, I thought that was, with the city that is sort of hemorrhaging money, right, and needs to create revenue. I don't know why the city is not saying like, let's invite all the dispensaries, right? Let's solve the problem that way. Maybe not the best approach, but I think at the same time, that community there is an interesting one, that borders of like Castro Valley, Hayward, Cherryland, and then Salmons Ashland, because there's the 238 expansion that was going to run parallel to 880. You have a lot of those lots still, and I think right there on Grove Way there's like the old antique store that's still kind of a vacant lot. The city was planning to build some sort of affordable housing right there on Bridge Court, which is right. So I think if the benefits package was to benefit that region, right? I don't know exactly what that means in terms of benefit, how it would benefit that local community, but that's another way of saying like, this might work out. This might be a win-win for both the city and those neighboring residents, right? And maybe the city can be intentional about how they apply those community benefits, right? So, I mean, if the city wanted to really sort of be, what's the word? Like, not courteous, but like think about, like, I think, the mayor made a reference about like how how the unincorporated area residents were some of his constituents, right? And which they're not, but if the city wanted to be like, generous in sort of thinking about the way that their neighbors are going to be impacted, that might be one way of thinking about like, okay, our community benefits are going to go directly into this area, right? Like rather, because I don't know exactly what that means in terms of donating to nonprofits in the area, or donate, or just the advance in the tax revenue, right? I'm assuming that's just going to go straight into services, right? Of which the community, the unincorporated residents won't benefit from. But just another sort of, I think, another thing to think about as we think about the future of dispensaries in the city of Hayward, I guess.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, and I think that's something that would be possible. I didn't write down the nonprofits that they named. I'd have to go back and read them or listen, but I know that like, yeah, that'd be something that would be possible. I think the hard part about doing stuff like that, because I would imagine there's at least some in the city who would be super open to doing that. It's just the administrative headache is just so hard because of all those like artificial lines are drawn right there that like, if I've heard there are residents of not Bridgecourt, but like on the other side of Bridgecourt, there's that little side street that leads over to a development that's technically in Hayward, even though it's surrounded on three sides by Castro Valley, and how that road gets like really heavily used because that's the entrance to this big development. The problem is the city can't do anything about that because it's not their road. Like if they tried to pave it, Alameda County would lose their mind. Like they're forbidden from doing that. So even for times when they like want to help, there's so much just like red tape that they can't, even if they wanted to. So I think working with community partners would be a great way of doing that because they can work around that a lot easier than the city can. But I think that's something that would be great to bear in mind, especially for that org. I know they challenged, I don't think anyone's going to take them up on it, but they did challenge the other local dispensaries to also pony up $200,000 a year to local nonprofits, which I thought was a very Chad move personally. To just feel like, okay, we're putting up 200 grand. You all put up 200 grand. With the four of us, we could get $800,000 a year and we can get a lot of stuff done with that. I don't think they're going to take them up on it, but I mean, that would be something too. Cause yeah, I found it interesting. There was a lot of complaints about the dispensary coming in. And that was another thing that kind of tipped me off about the potential like astroturfing issue was like, there are a lot of complaints coming in about the one coming in, but a lot of them were based off of complaints they had for the business that already existed, but no one was actually like saying that. So they were all assuming that it was just going to be more of the same, even though they're different owners and all this other stuff. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. And I think it's going to be a tender spot for a long time until things settle down.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Colin, for giving us for having to listen to 6 hours of meeting and then write up on it. And I was uh I had heard while it was going on that it was a long meeting and that it was running late into the night and early morning. And I respect to our public servants and our folks who are and our folks on the ground who show up to meetings, right? Because I think that's vibrant democracy, right? It's not always fun, especially those late night early morning meetings, so that's part of the fun. I did want to spend a little bit of time just talking about 2026 and the new year. We have hopefully we're going to be churning out the content for you all, but sort of living in scary times, and it's kind of hard to it's easy to lose sight of the local in the face of everything that's happening, one at the national level, what's happening in Minnesota, what's happening with the ICE Gestapo in the streets in Minnesota, harassing working people, folks, working immigrants, and murdering innocent mothers in the street, right? So it's easy to lose sight of what's happening on the ground here as a result of paying attention to what folks maybe rightfully say are more important issues, right? And on top of that, you add the ongoing. It's only we're entering the second week of January, and I think this administration has managed to bomb 2 countries, if you count what happened over the holidays, 3 countries: Nigeria over the holidays, over Christmas, Venezuela right at the start of the year, abducting their president, and bombing Syria as of I think maybe a day or 2 ago, right? So it feels like these are really unprecedented times, and I was trying to think of what the Hayward sort of local sort of spin on this is, and I think it's similar to what happened when folks came out and demanded the city divest from what was going on. With the ongoing genocide, right, in Palestine and Gaza. So it sort of feels like the large international national issues find their ways of trickling into the local, right? Whether it's folks who are interested in keeping our neighbors safe through doing neighborhood watch, also the sort of broad neighborhood watch, when it's not just the looking out for the petty crime, but just thinking about like how we protect our neighbors, from being abducted. But also the reality is like, at least those of us who lived through the past 2 decades, right, is we don't want any more meaningless wars. I mean, in my opinion, all wars feel a little bit meaningless, but because often the folks that are dying and killing are the poorest or working class folks that are sent to go die on behalf of the billionaire class. But that might just be my dirty leftist analysis, right? So it seems like every war that we continue to engage in is an unjust one, and one that only the most vulnerable continue to pay the price, and even those of us, right? There's a reason why we can't have nice things, right? Because we're spending $1 trillion on war. I had a friend who was saying, like, how is it that that the U.S. military was so easily able to go into Venezuela and just sort of pull the president out, and the soldiers in the U.S. was untouched. And it's like, well, they spent literally $1 trillion on the military. I'd be, I would be surprised if they. I mean, there was a little bit of luck there, I guess we'll say. But anyway, that's just to say that they spend a lot of money. This government spends a lot of money on war, and when you spend that amount of money, you end up using it. Right? So you spend money on healthcare, maybe you get healthcare. You spend money on social services, maybe you get the social services. So anyway, just a little bit of a rant, I guess, towards the end of this episode. Collin, give you a second to step in. I know you were doing a lot of the heavy lifting while I was dying a couple minutes ago. So I just wanted to give you a break as well and sort of talk a little bit about just how crazy 2026 has already been. And it's only 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think to not end it on a complete downer, that I think it's worth recognizing that we're in scary, in continually unprecedented times. But I think the part where that the local plays is, as you said, it's getting together. It's you're better able to talk with your neighbors, the people you interact with on a daily basis, than you are to interact with, organize with other groups from across the other side of the country, right, or the other side of the state even. So I think it's important to, like, it sounds trite because that's what everyone always says, like, oh, get to know your neighbors, but like it's real. Like you build community, you get to know your neighbors, and you start finding solidarity together, and big things can happen. I mean, the things can change, laws can change. That's how in Minnesota people have been able to protect their neighbors and keep ICE out of keep ICE from killing too many more or abducting too many more people. Is they're all working together, they're all looking out for each other, and that's, I think, what we need to do. And if I was to have an intention for 2026, I think it'd be something along those lines, where we can continue to build community, continue to know each other better, find solidarity together in one way or another across, because a lot of the artificial lines blur when you get this far down, that, like, yeah, we can look out for each other and maybe turn things around, or at least catch each other and hold each other up during the collapse. So
it does feel like we, especially after this week, of news and content, and it's just sort of never ending. It does feel like we hit a bit of a turning point in terms of what, the not just the actions of the federal government, but the response, right? The resistance, the mobilization, the fact that, folks are saying, like, enough, right? We don't want any of this. And we saw it in other places, but it does feel a little bit like we have hit a turning point. But what that sort of turn looks like, and I expect that there's going to be more overreach from the federal government, and and with more overreach, we'll probably see more acts of violence, right? So I think that's the other thing, is that people should be prepared, right? People should be prepared to respond to that, right? Whatever that looks like, whether it's through organizing, or whether it's through getting in contact with your legislators, finding ways to keep each other safe in these times, right? And there's plenty of examples from around the world and from history that usually those who are in power and don't tend to give it up easily, right? So I don't expect this government to sort of admit all the wrongs and ask for forgiveness, right? They're going to have to be forced out, and that could look very ugly until it happens. But when it happens, we'll be here to cover it, I'm sure, Collin.
That's right. We'll be here as long as we can keep the generator going.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I appreciate you for as always, for joining me on Over the Loudspeaker, and for dealing with my moments of lack of oxygen, I think is a nice way to put it. If you see me dying in the background as Collin is speaking, as you watch this episode, I survived. You have made it to the end of the episode. I'm here. I'm fine now. I took a cough drop. I feel a lot better. But yeah, folks, take care of yourselves. Get your flu shot. I'm a public health background, so go get your flu shot. Take care of yourself. Yes. Don't get others sick, because
all of your shots are still covered in California.
That's right. Go get them.
Yeah, take it easy, everybody. Have a good time. We'll see you next time.